for that, Mark. Now, we're going to move on to vaccines. And just before we go back to Mark, I just wanted to mention, for those that didn't notice, we were talking about this role that had been advertised by the UK Health Security Agency. We were talking about this on Friday's news programme, Vaccine Supply Operations Lead. Well, no sooner was that discussed than the job was withdrawn. So at this point, we have no idea why the job was withdrawn. The UK HSA still hasn't replied to my request for comment, and well, I would be surprised if they do, but let's wait and see if they do. But where does that take us?
I think Alex has just got a couple where we're leading into more coverage on vaccines, but I think this Newsweek one is yours, Alex. Is that correct?
It is, and I know we're upping the tempo at this point in the news. I'll just put on the record then that Newsweek has carried an opinion piece by a medical student. It's time that for the scientific community to admit we were wrong about COVID and it cost lives. And through an error in my slide, I don't have the author's name to hand, but it will be in the show notes. This is the conclusion of it. Perhaps if I, here we are, Kevin Bass is the student in question. And he writes that we did not properly appreciate that preferences determine how scientific expertise is used. We made science a team sport. That made it no longer science. It became us versus them. And they, that's the public, responded the only way anyone might expect them to, by resisting. Our emotional response and our ingrained partisanship prevented us from seeing the full impact of our actions on the people we are supposed to serve. And a final piece from him: we crafted policy for the people without consulting them. If our public health officials had led with less hubris, the course of the pandemic in the United States might have had a very different outcome with far fewer lost lives. Newsweek is seeing fit to publish this by a medical student, a hopeful sign.
Yes, and Mark, that brings us on then to Dr. Albert Bourla.
Yes, he spoke in Chicago this past Thursday, February 2nd. The Economic Club of Chicago, along with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs and many other think tanks and groups, I'm constantly monitoring them. And they had the illustrious Mr. Bourla speak. He noted he was raised in a Jewish minority family in Greece, and he's trained as a veterinarian, he noted. He told a moderator, and he worked in a Pfizer veterinary wing for a while before moving up the ladder. Before we get on to some video clips that I understand we'll probably be showing, there he is addressing the Economic Club of Chicago the 2nd of February. Here's a little bit of his philosophy, his worldview. He said the link between a healthy citizenry and a healthy economy is vital, something really important to point out. And yes, the business community should be actively engaged, quote unquote. And companies such as Pfizer need to provide a healthy environment for their employees and to reach out beyond their workplace and invest in our communities, quote unquote. And what we decide will have consequences for generations to come, quote unquote. And he went on to say that his favorite philosopher is Aristotle, and that health is a matter of choice, quote unquote. That quote was attributed to Aristotle. And then he went on to say, Mr. Bourla, in that spirit, I think we have a choice to make. The business community can decide that someone else should worry about public health, and we can ignore the indisputable link between public health and prosperity. And he mentioned that American exceptionalism across industries is a goal of his company, providing health care and a healthy environment for their workforce and the greater community, in other words, all the people in the world. Or he said, we can accept and indeed welcome the corporate responsibility that we have as employers to be forces for good in the workplace and in society by focusing on the critical issue of public health. And we need to use our position as employers to provide a healthy environment for our employees and invest in our communities, as I noted. And he went on to add, I believe we are at an inflection point in society that will have consequences for generations to come. So with all due respect to Aristotle, I don't think there's a choice, really, he went on to say, whether big business or small, or pharmaceutical companies, or banks, or universities, manufacturers, even nonprofits, we are all somehow in the healthcare biz, he said. Every one of us who employs people can make a difference. And this gives you a little bit of his outlook on things. I'll add a little bit more, because without robust public health, there cannot be the economic opportunity a country needs to maintain its position in the world. People cannot produce if they cannot work. So a lot of this is tied to his idea of the work state, the idea of that the main goal of public health is to have a productive workforce. It's very much siloed in that area. And he went on to cite some statistics. The IMF global GDP dropped by 3.9% from 2019 to 2020. That's a pretty huge change, he said. And that's pretty much his outlook on things. I'm just kind of going through this. I think from here we can listen to the video clips, and it will round out the table I just got done setting on his comments.
While 50% is determined by social and economic factors on a person's physical environment where they live. Or to say it differently, your zip code is a better predictor of your health than your genetic code. This is why the effort to ensure good health must go beyond the walls of a workplace. For companies, it starts there, of course, in the workplace, but it must expand to include partnerships with public health departments to share and deliver accurate information, tools, resources people need, and to take a good, hard look at where there are gaps in healthcare delivery and how we can work together to close them. That requires all of us in the private sector to think differently. I know public and private partnerships are not always easy. Companies and public health departments have different ways of working, different priorities sometimes, and different areas of expertise. But this is a good thing because there is no one size fits all when it comes to public health. We can learn from each other as long as we remember that we are fighting the same enemy. And I have found throughout my life that there is nothing more unifying than a common enemy. That's why grandparents and grandchildren get along so well.
So Mark,
that's
Mark,
one example, additional example of what he had to say. Brian, do you want to comment?
I just wanted to say I found it extraordinary that when you define a common enemy, you should come to children and grandparents. He laughed, and the audience laughed with him. But I listened to that, and I thought, what is this man talking about? I found that very last statement deeply disturbing, but perhaps it was just me. Sorry to cut in.
No, that's okay. Well, you can see his corporate worldview that they believe, the corporations, that they have this larger role to play beyond their own corporate entity, and they want to reach out, have public partnerships, public-private partnerships, and they believe that they're mandated in a way. He sees himself as this visionary that reaches beyond the confines of Pfizer and their own workforce and reaches out to greater humanity and says, it's good for business to be productive. We want prosperity. We want American exceptionalism across industries. Therefore, we need good health. Now, that's a way of looking at good health, but it's certainly not the only way. And when he said that there's no one-size-fits-all approach or philosophy, that rather begets and goes against the grain of what we've actually seen. We've seen a one-size-fits-all do the vax and don't do much else. Take the vax jab, don't do much else during the whole time of the COVIDocracy. He also spoke to CBS News Face the Nation in March of 2022, and he was asked some fairly good questions considering it was Orthodox press. And he was saying that no matter what supplements we might have, no matter what therapeutics we might have, we've got to have vaccines. That's the centerpiece. That's got to be the way it is. And yes, children need these. I know that the state of Florida, didn't think that young children needed the vaccines, but Bourla believe that's wrong. So actually, he has taken more or less a one-size-fits-all approach, kind of relegating everything else to a secondary or supplemental category. But I don't know if you wanted to show another video clip, or was that the only one you're going to show?
No, I got the second one here. I think we should play it because you get a deeper insight into this man as he chuckles at his own joke.
It's you guys' call. Go ahead if you want to do that.
Let's roll it.
Companies are already engaging. Bank of America, for example, recently partnered with the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, American Cancer Society, and the University of Michigan School of Public Health to launch an initiative to advance health outcomes to Black, Hispanic, Latino, Asian American, and Native American communities in 11 cities, including Chicago. Partnerships with public health entities unlock opportunities for not only employees, but for communities as a whole. And that ultimately is the key to a healthy economy. The good news is that this all takes place against a backdrop of an exciting scientific renaissance driven by previously unimaginable advancements in biology that we are having right now and technology that will come together to produce solutions of great scale. With a strengthening innovation ecosystem, we expect a dramatic impact on human health, where we can hopefully cure many currently incurable conditions, transform others into manageable chronic diseases, and be better prepared for future pandemics.
Yeah, so there you have it. You get a little bit better view, and you don't hear this much because the Chicago media, as far as I can tell, the Chicago Tribune, the Sun-Times, the TV stations, there might have been a couple advance announcements that he was going to be in town, but I didn't even find those. It was hard enough just to find the YouTube presentation on this, but there was no media coverage. So it looks like UK Column is virtually alone in even reporting on this and giving an objective view of this man's outlook on things. He's making it sound pretty rosy. He's not talking about the trials that were carried out at Stanford on very young children and a lot of the problems that reportedly arose out of those trials for the vax, and all the myriad yellow card data and VAERS data that's been posted on adverse reactions and deaths that evidently have been linked to the vaccines, at least in some cases. He's making it sound all very innovative, all very optimistic, and but it just gives you an idea that Bank of America and entities like that are no longer siloed, as the globalists like to say, that they don't have these siloed functions. They don't have their specialized functions as much as they now collaborate, public-private partnerships. Some call this the real definition of fascism, when government and big corporations collaborate like this and collude. And so it just gives you a view that you don't hear very often of where Bourla's mind is at on all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And viewers can make up their own mind what they think of it, but it raises a lot of questions and it gives us a lot of insights. So,
yeah, Mark, thank you very much for that. I know that you've some other material to do with health, which we had lined up for today's news. I'm sorry we're going to have to hold that because we're just about out of time. But thank you very much for bringing those clips to us. It's fascinating to see what is in the mind of that man. And many people in the the chat box for UK Column have picked up on my reaction to him talking about the grandparents. And they said, well, of course, what this man wants to do is break the bond between the parents and the children, the grandparents and the children. So anybody can be coming along and saying the child is going to be vaccinated, and that's what happens because there's nobody to protect the child. Let's leave it there. We'll come on to a little bit of the health stuff in extra time.
Yeah,
but,
Alex, just one final slide here.
Yes, and finally, we leave you with late breaking news that a German spy balloon has been detected over China. For those listening in audio only, it's a hot air balloon in the shape of a giant tankard of German beer.
From Munich, no doubt.
But that would be the place, which
Yep.
of course is the base of the BND2, or used to be.
Of course, that style of beer glass, Alex, has very thick glass, and I would imagine that the American missiles will be bouncing off, possibly.
Possibly. Anyway.
We'll leave it there. I think we should. Thank you very much to everybody for joining us, wherever you are in the world. Big thank you for everybody who is supporting the UK column. Our intention in 2023 is to grow and expand, and we will be telling you more about that in due course. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.